Hidden beneath centuries of jungle growth, a forgotten city waited in silence. 5 men, drawn together by their shared passion for uncovering history's secrets, had no idea their expedition would change everything. Dr. James Harlow led the team deep into the Amazon's heart, where satellite imagery had hinted at unusual formations. What they discovered wasn't just another settlement, but a vast metropolis with technology that shouldn't have existed 4 millennia ago. Strange metallic objects with inscriptions that matched no known language. Tools crafted with impossible precision. And in the central chamber, sealed away from the world, a single artifact that defied all explanation. What civilization could have created objects so advanced, yet vanished without a trace? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 5 men gathered in the cramped university office, their weathered faces illuminated by the glow of a projector. Maps of the Amazon basin covered the walls, marked with red circles and question marks. Dr. James Harlow, silver-haired and broad-shouldered despite his 55 years, pointed to satellite imagery, showing unusual geometric patterns beneath the dense canopy. "Gentlemen, what we're looking at defies conventional explanation," James said, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent challenging archaeological orthodoxy. "These structures shouldn't be there. Not in this region. Not from this time period." Dr. Marcus Chen adjusted his glasses, the linguist's nimble fingers tracing the outlines on the screen. At 62, his reputation for deciphering extinct languages was unmatched. "The positioning suggests ceremonial significance, similar to Göbekli Tepe, but potentially older. And how exactly do you propose we reach this place?" Richard Donovan leaned against the wall, arms crossed over his chest. The former military man had saved James's life twice on previous expeditions. His tactical expertise was matched only by his skepticism. Last survey team in that region lost 2 men to dengue fever. Professor Samuel Whitaker, technological historian and the oldest at 58, tapped his tablet. "I've analyzed the topographical data. There's a river approach that can get us within 5 miles of the site. Challenging but not impossible. The university board rejected our funding request," James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Called it a frivolous pursuit of internet conspiracy theories." Thomas Rodriguez, the team's geologist and photographer, spread out a worn leather case on the table. Inside, wrapped in protective cloth, lay a small obsidian mirror with peculiar etchings around its perimeter. The artifact gleamed with unnatural perfection. "This is why we're going," Tom said quietly. "Founded in a private collection in Peru last year, the collector claimed it came from the same region we're targeting." Samuel lifted the mirror carefully, examining its surface. "Impossible craftsmanship. The polishing technique. We couldn't replicate this precision until the 18th century. Marcus traced the symbols etched around the edge. These don't match any known pre-Columbian writing system. But there are similarities to glyphs found in isolated sites across continents." James touched the mirror's surface. "The most interesting part, spectroscopic analysis, dates it to approximately 2000 BCE. Carbon dating of the residual organic material in the handle binding confirms it." "So, what's the play here?" Rick asked, practical as always. "We're going in unofficially?" "I've secured minimal funding for a routine geological survey," James replied. "Enough to get us there and establish a base camp. After that, we're on our own." Samuel carefully re-wrapped the mirror. "Academia will label us crackpots if we're wrong, and if we're right," Tom countered, excitement breaking through his usually calm demeanor. "We rewrite human history." The projector flickered, showing a final image. A clearing in the jungle where stone corners peeked through the vegetation. "The mirror isn't just an artifact," James said, his voice lowering. "When positioned correctly during equinox sunrise, it projects a light pattern. I believe it's a key of sorts." "A key to what?" Rick asked. James's eyes reflected the determination of a man who'd spent his career being ridiculed for pushing boundaries. To the entrance of a city built by people who shouldn't have had the knowledge to create it. Marcus nodded slowly. The question isn't just who built it, but why they wanted it found eventually. This mirror was meant to survive, to be discovered. 2 weeks from today, gentlemen, James concluded. We either come back with proof that rewrites history books, or we don't come back at all. The room fell silent as each man contemplated the choice before them, comfortable academic obscurity or a chance at the discovery of a lifetime. The obsidian mirror seemed to absorb the light around it, a dark promise of secrets waiting to be unearthed. Sometimes, Samuel whispered, I wonder if certain knowledge was buried for a reason. No one answered. They didn't need to. In 2 weeks, they would begin to find out. The Amazon swallowed them whole. 5 days into their expedition, the men pushed through a jungle so dense it transformed daylight into dim, emerald twilight. The air hung thick with moisture, every breath a labor against the oppressive heat. Machetes getting dull, Rick grunted, hacking through a curtain of vines. His khaki shirt clung to his torso, soaked with sweat. 2 more miles to the coordinates, if our guide's information was accurate. Carlos, their local guide, had vanished 3 days earlier. They'd awoken to find his hammock empty, his few possessions gone. The only trace was a crude warning symbol carved into a tree, a circle with a diagonal line through it. He knew something. Marcus wiped condensation from his glasses for the 100th time that day. The way he reacted when we showed him the map. Pure fear. James pushed ahead, compass in hand. Indigenous tribes have avoided this region for centuries. Local myths talk about a city of the gods, where the ground trembles and spirits whisper. Myths often contain kernels of truth, Samuel added, adjusting the straps on his pack. Despite being the oldest, he maintained a steady pace. Electromagnetic anomalies could explain the trembling ground. Natural gas vents might account for auditory hallucinations. Tom stopped suddenly, kneeling to examine something half buried in the mud. James, look at this. He carefully extracted what appeared to be a small figurine, no larger than his palm. As he brushed away centuries of accumulated soil, they gathered around, momentarily forgetting their exhaustion. The figurine depicted a humanoid figure seated in what resembled a cockpit or control chamber. Made from a ceramic-like material, its craftsmanship was extraordinary. Delicate controls, carved under the figure's 6-fingered hands. A helmet with intricate designs covering its elongated head. That's not Maya, not Inca. Not anything I've ever seen, Marcus whispered. His expert eye immediately recognizing the anomaly, Samuel took the figurine with trembling hands. The level of detail, and look at the material. He scratched gently at an edge. This isn't pottery. It's some kind of composite. 6 fingers, James noted, pointing to the figure's hands, consistent with descriptions in some of the oldest Sumerian texts. The Anunnaki, those who came from the sky. Rick, ever practical, scanned the jungle around them. If this is on the surface, the site must be close. Tom had already begun photographing the figurine from every angle. The helmet has writing, symbols similar to what we saw on the mirror, but more complex. It's a pilot, Samuel said quietly. That's what this depicts. A pilot in a vehicle. James looked up from the figurine to meet each man's eyes. Gentlemen, I believe we just found evidence of contact. The question is, contact with whom? As if responding to his question, a distant rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Birds erupted from the canopy, their panicked cries echoing through the jungle. Storm coming? Rick suggested, though the sky visible through breaks in the canopy remained clear. No, Tom replied, pointing ahead where the jungle seemed to thin. Look! They pushed forward through the last barrier of vegetation and found themselves at the edge of a vast clearing. No, not a clearing. The space before them had been deliberately carved from the jungle. The ground covered with interlocking stone blocks now cracked and shifted by centuries of root systems. And rising from this ancient plaza, half consumed by the relentless jungle, massive stone structures. Pyramids, but not like any they'd seen in Mexico or Egypt. These were sleeker, with impossible angles and surfaces that still held a polished sheen despite millennia of exposure. "My God," breathed Samuel. James stepped forward onto the stone plaza, the pilot figurine clutched tightly in his hand. "We're standing in the courtyard of a city that shouldn't exist." Marcus was already examining the nearest wall, covered in dense writing. "This language, it's like nothing I've ever seen, but there's a pattern to it." Another tremor passed through the ground, stronger this time. "The Earth's been disturbed," Tom said, his geologist's instincts kicking in. "Something's changing beneath us." Rick unholstered his sidearm, a reflex from years in combat zones. "James, what exactly did you say that figurine represents?" James looked down at the artifact, its strange eyes seeming to stare back at him with ancient intelligence. I think it represents the people who built this place, and I don't think they were human." Dawn broke over the ancient city, painting the stone structures in amber light. The team had established a makeshift camp at the edge of the plaza, none of them willing to sleep among the ruins after the tremors had finally subsided near midnight. "I've never seen construction like this," Tom said, examining a wall with his geological hammer. The blocks fit together with microscopic precision. No mortar, yet water couldn't pass between them. They'd spent the night in shifts, both from scientific excitement and a growing sense of unease. Something about the city felt awake, watching. "The central structure seems to be some kind of observatory." Samuel pointed to the largest pyramid. "The alignment suggests astronomical significance." James was busy mapping the site, his experienced eye cataloguing each building. "The layout follows mathematical principles. Look at these angles, all precise multiples of 3.14. Pi," Marcus whispered. "They built the city using pi as a fundamental constant." Rick had established a perimeter, his military training evident in the methodical way he secured their position. "Something's off about this place. My compass is spinning randomly near certain structures. Electromagnetic anomalies," Samuel confirmed, holding up his useless tablet. "None of our electronics work properly within 50 yards of the central pyramid." Marcus had been photographing symbols with a film camera, the only technology still functioning reliably. "The language is unlike anything in our records, but I'm seeing patterns. Repeated elements that might be verbs or articles." James led them toward the central pyramid, its entrance a dark maw framed by columns inscribed with the same unknown script. "We need to document everything before attempting to enter any structures." "Over here," Tom called from a smaller building to their right. "You need to see this." They converged on what appeared to be a circular structure, its roof partially collapsed. Inside, stone benches ringed a central platform where a metal pedestal rose from the floor. Atop it sat a black sphere approximately the size of a basketball. "Don't touch it," Rick warned. But Samuel was already approaching. "It's vibrating," the older man said, holding his hand inches from the surface. "And warm." The sphere was perfectly smooth, except for a series of precision-cut indentations around its circumference. It seemed to absorb the sunlight falling on it, rather than reflect it. "It's not stone," Tom said, examining it closely. "Some kind of metal alloy, but none I recognize." Samuel circled the pedestal. "This isn't just decorative. The arrangement suggests it's a device of some kind." James studied the floor around the pedestal, noting channels cut into the stone that radiated outward like spokes on a wheel. "These channels connect to every building in the complex. Whatever this sphere is, it's central to the city's function. Look at these marks." Marcus pointed to glyphs surrounding the base. "They repeat a specific sequence. I believe it's instructional." Rick, standing guard at the entrance, stiffened suddenly. "We're not alone." The others turned to follow his gaze. At the edge of the plaza, partially obscured by foliage, stood a figure. Human, but not their missing guide. The figure observed them for a long moment, then deliberately stepped back into the jungle. "Wait!" James called, but the figure was gone. "Someone knows we're here," Rick said grimly. "And they've been watching." Tom had turned back to the sphere, fascinated despite the interruption. "There's a pattern to these indentations. like they're meant to be pressed in sequence. Don't, James warned. We have no idea what it might trigger. But as he spoke, a shaft of sunlight penetrated the damaged roof, striking the sphere directly. The black surface seemed to ripple, and a low hum filled the chamber. The indentations began to glow with an inner blue light. "It's activating," Samuel whispered, backing away. The sphere rose from the pedestal, hovering inches above it without any visible means of support. The humming intensified, and the channels in the floor began to glow with the same blue luminescence, energy racing outward toward the other structures. "Outside," Rick ordered, military command in his voice. "Now!" They scrambled from the building as the humming grew to a vibration they could feel in their bones. Across the complex, other structures began to illuminate from within. "My God," James breathed. "The entire city is powering up." "After 4,000 years, Marcus added, awe-overwhelming fear. "Whatever they built here, it still works." From the central pyramid, a beam of intense blue light shot skyward, piercing the jungle canopy and disappearing into the cloudless blue above. "I don't think that's a beacon," Samuel said quietly. "I think it's a transmission." Night fell over the ancient city, but darkness never truly came. The activated structures pulsed with a subtle blue luminescence, casting long shadows that seemed to move when no one was watching. "The energy readings are off the charts," Samuel said, adjusting a handheld device he'd cobbled together after their electronics failed. "It's like nothing I've ever seen. Not electrical, not nuclear. Something else entirely." They'd retreated to their camp after the city's awakening, maintaining a careful distance from the central pyramid, where the beam still projected skyward, now visible as a thin blue line against the star-filled night. "Whatever built this place had technology we can't comprehend," James said, reviewing Tom's sketches of the various structures. "The precision, the materials, it's beyond what should have been possible 4,000 years ago." Marcus had spread his notes across a tarp, cross-referencing the symbols he'd photographed. "I'm beginning to see patterns in the language. Certain glyphs repeat in specific combinations. It's mathematical in structure, almost like code rather than spoken language." Rick returned from his perimeter check, his expression grim. "Our visitor from earlier has friends. I've spotted at least 3 different sets of tracks circling our position." "Locals?" Tom asked. Rick shook his head. "Modern boots, military or paramilitary grade. How would anyone know we're here?" Samuel wondered. James exchanged a meaningful look with Rick. "The beam. It would be visible for miles, maybe even from satellite imagery. We need to accelerate our documentation," James decided. "If someone else is interested in this site, we need to secure as much data as possible before any confrontation." "I think we should investigate the eastern structure," Marcus suggested, pointing to his map. "The symbols there appeared most frequently throughout the site. It might be a library or records chamber." At dawn, they approached the eastern building, a low, circular structure with a domed roof still remarkably intact. The entrance was smaller than the others, requiring them to duck through a perfectly arched doorway. Inside, the air felt different, cooler, drier, as if environmentally controlled. The walls were lined with recessed compartments, most empty, but some still containing what looked like crystalline tablets. "Incredible preservation," Samuel whispered, his breath visible in the suddenly chilled air. Tom focused his attention on a pedestal at the center of the room. Unlike the black sphere from yesterday, this contained a transparent cube, approximately 10 inches on each side. Inside the cube, suspended in clear liquid, floated what appeared to be a metallic disc. "It's some kind of preservation system," he said, examining the cube without touching it. "The liquid hasn't evaporated after thousands of years." Samuel leaned closer. "The container appears to be made of a single piece of material, no seams, no joints. We couldn't manufacture something like this today." James circled the pedestal, noting symbols etched into its base. "Marcus, can you make anything of this inscription?" The linguist studied the markings. It references memory repeatedly, and something about the visitors and their journey. "I think this might be a data storage device." "A hard drive," Samuel translated into modern terms. But thousands of years old. Rick had positioned himself near the entrance, keeping watch. James, we've got movement in the central plaza. Before they could react, the cube began to hum, the liquid inside swirling around the metallic disc. The surface of the disc rippled, then projected a beam of light upward. The beam expanded, forming what they could only describe as a three-dimensional hologram, a perfect representation of the city as it once was, complete with structures now ruined and beings moving among them. "My God," James whispered. The holographic beings were humanoid, but clearly not human. Taller, with elongated skulls and six-fingered hands, just like the figurine they'd found. They moved with purpose through the projected city, their activities centered around the now-activated central pyramid. "It's a recording," Samuel breathed. "A historical record preserved for millennia." As they watched, transfixed, one of the beings seemed to turn directly toward them, its featureless eyes somehow penetrating across time itself. It raised a six-fingered hand, pointing directly at the watchers. The hologram flickered, then changed to show the same city, but now in chaos, structures damaged, fires burning. The beings in apparent conflict with each other. "They destroyed themselves," Marcus whispered. "No," James said, as the image changed again to show the beings methodically burying their city. "They hid it, deliberately." The final image showed a star map, with one particular star pulsing brightly. "That's not a historical record," Rick said from the doorway, his voice tight. "That's a message. And I think the beam we activated is sending a response," Samuel added, a chill running through the room that had nothing to do with temperature. "We need to shut it down," Rick insisted, as they hurried back toward the central pyramid. "That beam is broadcasting our location to God knows who, both on Earth and possibly beyond it." The morning sun had risen fully now, though it competed with the blue energy still pulsing through the ancient city. The beam from the central pyramid remained visible, a thin line of light extending into the cloudless sky. "We don't even know how it activated, let alone how to deactivate it," Samuel argued. "The technology is beyond our understanding." James led them across the main plaza, his mind racing through possibilities. The holographic record showed the builders deliberately hiding this place. They must have left a way to control it, unless they specifically designed it to activate and call them back, Marcus suggested. In which case, it's doing exactly what it was intended to do. Tom had been uncharacteristically quiet since viewing the hologram. "Did anyone else notice the star map at the end of the projection? That wasn't our solar system." They reached the base of the central pyramid, its massive stone steps leading up to the entrance they had yet to explore. The doorway was narrow, barely wide enough for one person, and emanated the same blue glow that now permeated the city. "I'll go first," Rick said, drawing his sidearm. "Stay close, single file. Touch nothing unless absolutely necessary." The interior was a single large chamber with a ceiling that rose the full height of the pyramid. In the center stood a raised dais, and upon it a crystalline table or altar. Blue energy coursed through channels in the floor, all converging on this central point. "It's some kind of control center," Samuel whispered, as they approached the dais. They could see an object resting on the crystalline surface, a metallic gauntlet designed for a six-fingered hand. Its surface was inscribed with the same symbols they'd seen throughout the city, and it pulsed with internal light that synchronized with the beam shooting skyward. "The control mechanism," James said. "It must be. Designed for their physiology, not ours," Marcus observed. "Which means they never intended for humans to operate it." Tom circled the dais, studying the floor channels. "These connect to every structure we've seen. This isn't just controlling the beam. It's the central control point for the entire city." Rick maintained his distance, weapon ready. "I don't like this. It feels like we're being funneled exactly where someone or something wants us. We need to understand what this beam is communicating," James said, stepping onto the dais. "Marcus, any insights from the symbols on the gauntlet?" The linguist leaned closer, careful not to touch. Recurring patterns suggest concepts of awakening, return, Ugan preparation. This isn't just sending a signal, it's preparing the city for their return. A sound from the entrance made them all turn. A figure stood silhouetted against the daylight, human, male, dressed in tactical gear. Step away from the artifact. The voice was calm, authoritative. "Dr. Harlow, I presume. We've been expecting you to lead us here eventually." Rick raised his weapon. "Identify yourself." The man remained in the doorway. "Colonel Victor Reeves, United States Special Operations Command. But my current employer is considerably more interested in this site than the U.S. government." More figures appeared behind him, armed men in similar tactical gear. "You've been tracking us," James realized. "Since before we left the university. Your funding request raised certain flags," Reeves explained, stepping into the chamber. "Private interests have been monitoring potential sites like this for decades. Your obsidian mirror was quite the breadcrumb trail. What do you want?" Samuel demanded. "The same thing you do. Knowledge." Reeves gestured to the gauntlet. "But my employers are more interested in applications than academic papers. That technology could revolutionize energy production, weapons development." "It's not meant for us," James interrupted. "You saw the hologram? These beings deliberately buried their city after fighting amongst themselves," Reeves countered. "Which suggests some of them wanted to share their knowledge with humanity." As they argued, the gauntlet's pulsing increased in frequency. The energy flowing through the floor channels brightened. "Something's happening," Tom warned. The gauntlet rose from the altar, hovering inches above the surface. It rotated slowly, as if examining the humans surrounding it. "It's scanning us," Samuel whispered. Reeves' men raised their weapons, but the colonel held up his hand. "Hold fire. Let's see what it does." The gauntlet suddenly expanded, transforming from a simple hand covering into a more complex device with articulated components. A beam of light projected from it, scanning each person in the chamber before focusing on James. "Why me?" He breathed. Marcus had been studying the rapidly changing symbols projected by the device. His expression turned to one of horror. "It's not calling its creators," he said. "It's evaluating us, to determine if humanity is ready." "Ready for what?" Rick demanded. The linguist swallowed hard. "The symbols. They translate roughly as judgment comes." Tense silence filled the chamber as the gauntlet continued to hover, its scanning beam fixed on James. No one dared move, neither the archaeological team nor Reeves's armed men. "Dr. Harlow," Reeves said quietly, "what exactly is it doing to you?" James stood rigid in the blue light. "I can feel it, searching, not just scanning my body. It's somehow examining my thoughts, my memories. It's evaluating his neural patterns," Samuel suggested. "Scientific curiosity temporarily overriding fear. Advanced technology could theoretically read electrical impulses from the brain." Marcus had backed against the wall, frantically scribbling translations. "The symbols are changing rapidly. I'm seeing references to genetic compatibility and moral capacity." Suddenly, the gauntlet retracted its scanning beam and settled back onto the crystalline altar. The pulsing light stabilized to a steady glow, and the beam shooting from the pyramid's apex narrowed but remained active. "I think it completed its initial assessment," James said, visibly shaken. "But I don't think it's finished with us. My orders are to secure this site and all artifacts," Reeves stated, his men spreading out around the chamber's perimeter. "You have two options: cooperate as consultants or be escorted out immediately." "You have no authority here," Tom protested. "This discovery belongs to humanity, not whatever private interests you represent." Reeves smiled thinly. "We're in an uncharted region of the Amazon. There is no authority here, except what we bring with us." Rick had positioned himself between Reeves and the rest of the team. "James, what's our play?" Before James could respond, a low rumbling shook the pyramid. Dust sifted down from the ceiling as the floor vibrated beneath their feet. "Another activation sequence?" Samuel wondered. "No," Tom said, his geological expertise evident. "That's structural. Something's opening beneath us. A section of the floor near the altar slid away, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into darkness. From below, a different quality of light emerged. Not the blue energy of the activated city, but a soft amber glow. "That wasn't there before," Marcus stated unnecessarily. "The gauntlet triggered it." After scanning Dr. Harlow, Reeves noted, eyeing James with new interest. "It appears you've been granted access to something." Two of Reeves's men approached the opening, tactical lights mounted on their weapons probing the darkness. "Hold position," Reeves ordered. "We don't know what's down there." "That's precisely why we need to find out," James countered. "Whatever the builders left here, they clearly intended it to be found eventually. They created triggers and safeguards." The amber light from below intensified, and a small object floated up from the stairwell. It hovered at eye level, a translucent crystalline sphere about the size of a tennis ball, pulsing with internal amber light. "Nobody touch it," Rick warned, but the sphere was already moving, drifting directly toward James. It stopped before him, rotating slowly. Within the sphere's crystalline structure, microscopic patterns shifted and rearranged themselves like living circuitry. "It's a data storage device," Samuel breathed. "But operating on principles we can't begin to comprehend." James cautiously raised his hand toward the sphere, which responded by moving closer until it nearly touched his palm. "It wants me to take it." "James, don't," Rick began, but it was too late. As James's fingers made contact with the crystalline surface, the sphere adhered to his palm. The amber light intensified, spreading up his arm in web-like patterns beneath his skin. James gasped, his eyes widening. "Get it off him!" Tom shouted, moving forward, but Reeves' men blocked his path. "Wait," Reeves commanded. "Let's see what happens." James stood frozen, his expression shifting from pain to wonder. "I can see everything," he whispered. "Their history, their journey. They came from a dying world, searching for new beginnings." "Who?" Marcus demanded. "The builders?" James nodded slowly, his eyes unfocused as if seeing something beyond the physical room. "They found Earth primitive but promising. They accelerated our evolution, guided our development. But there was a schism among them. Some believed humanity should develop naturally. Others wanted to advance us more rapidly." The amber light receded, and the sphere detached from James's hand, hovering once more before him. "They left repositories of knowledge across the planet," James continued, his voice stronger now, "hidden until we reached specific evolutionary milestones. This city is one such repository, a test and a gift combined." "What kind of test?" Samuel asked. James focused on the crystalline sphere, still rotating before him. "To determine if we're ready for what they left behind, or if we'd only use it to destroy ourselves." Reeves stepped forward. "And what exactly did they leave behind, Dr. Harlow?" James looked at the colonel, his expression grave. "Knowledge that could elevate humanity to the stars, or reduce us to ashes." The crystalline sphere retreated, descending back down the spiraling staircase. Its amber glow served as a beacon, clearly inviting them to follow. "We're going down there," Reeves stated rather than asked, gesturing for two of his men to take the lead. "Not without us," James insisted. "Whatever's down there responded to me, not you." Reeves considered this, then nodded curtly. "You first, then. But my men will be right behind you." James looked to his team. Rick gave a subtle nod. They had little choice but to cooperate for now. The staircase descended in a perfect spiral, each step identical to the last. The walls were lined with the same unknown script they'd seen throughout the city. But here the symbols glowed faintly from within the stone itself. "These passages aren't just instructions," Marcus observed as they descended. "They're a story, the builder's history." The staircase ended in a circular chamber approximately 30 feet in diameter. Unlike the rough-hewn structures above, this room was perfectly smooth, its walls, floor, and ceiling appearing to be fashioned from a single piece of material. At the center stood a pedestal similar to those they'd seen before, but what rested upon it left them all speechless. A perfect geometric shape, a dodecahedron composed of 12 pentagonal faces, hovered inches above the pedestal's surface. Each face was inscribed with symbols that shifted and moved like living text. The object rotated slowly, emanating a gentle hum that seemed to resonate with the chamber itself. "It's made of some kind of metal," Samuel noted, approaching cautiously. "But I've never seen anything like it. The surface almost appears liquid while maintaining rigid structure." "Don't touch it," Rick warned, but his words were interrupted by Tom's sudden collapse. The geologist crumpled to the floor, his body convulsing. James and Marcus rushed to his side, while Rick kept his attention divided between their fallen colleague and Reeves' men. "What's happening to him?" Marcus demanded. Samuel knelt beside Tom, checking his vitals. Elevated pulse, pupils dilated. "It's almost like a seizure, but—" Tom's eyes snapped open, but they were changed. The irises now ringed with the same amber light they'd seen in the sphere. He spoke in a language none of them recognized. His voice layered with harmonics that shouldn't have been possible from human vocal cords. "It's the Builder's language," Marcus realized, frantically taking notes. "He's speaking their tongue." "The artifact is affecting him somehow," James said, looking between Tom and the hovering dodecahedron. "There must be a connection." Tom's convulsions subsided, but the amber glow in his eyes remained. He sat up slowly, staring at the dodecahedron with apparent recognition. "Tom," James asked cautiously, "are you all right?" When Tom spoke again, it was in English, but his cadence was altered, more measured and precise. "The repository contains all that we were, all that we learned, the mistakes we made and the wonders we created. He's channeling them," Samuel whispered. "The artifact is using him as a conduit." Reeves stepped forward, his tactical demeanor momentarily broken by genuine awe. "What is that object? What does it do?" Tom, or whatever was speaking through him, turned to regard Reeves. "The Codex of Ascension contains the collective knowledge of our civilization. Biological, technological, philosophical, the sum of 60,000 years of advancement." "My God," James breathed. "An entire civilization's knowledge base. Why have you hidden it?" Marcus asked. "Why bury it for millennia?" Tom's head tilted in an unnervingly inhuman manner. "The schism divided us. Some believed humanity should evolve naturally, discovering the universe's laws through your own efforts. Others wished to accelerate your development, make you more like us. In the end, we compromised. The knowledge would remain, hidden but accessible when you reach certain developmental thresholds. And have we reached those thresholds?" James asked. Tom turned to him, amber eyes unblinking. "You stand at a precipice. Your species has achieved sufficient technological advancement to access our knowledge, but your moral and ethical development remains concerning." Reeves moved closer to the dodecahedron. "How do we access this knowledge?" "It is not for you," Tom said flatly, looking directly at the colonel. "Your intentions are impure. You seek power rather than understanding." One of Reeves's men raised his weapon, but the colonel motioned him to stand down. "Don't be hasty. We need to understand what we're dealing with." The dodecahedron's rotation increased, its hum intensifying. The symbols on its faces moved more rapidly, seeming to leap from one surface to another in complex patterns. "The Codex is awakening fully," Tom said, his voice now tinged with urgency. "It must evaluate all present before proceeding." "Evaluate how?" Rick asked, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. The answer came as beams of light shot from each pentagonal face of the dodecahedron, sweeping across every person in the chamber. Unlike the gauntlet scan, this felt invasive, penetrating, as if every thought and memory were being extracted and examined. "Your species stands divided, as we once were," Tom intoned as the scanning continued. "The Codex will determine if any among you is worthy of guardianship." The scanning beams retracted suddenly, and the dodecahedron's rotation slowed. The chamber fell silent, except for the artifact's gentle hum. Tom remained seated on the floor, amber light still circling his irises. "The evaluation is complete," he announced in that strange, layered voice. "Results are mixed." "What does that mean?" James asked, helping Tom to his feet. The geologist's head turned with mechanical precision toward James. Some present have potential as guardians. Others represent precisely why the knowledge was hidden. Reeves stepped forward. I'm here on behalf of interests that can protect and properly utilize this technology. Whatever your criteria, your mind reveals your true intentions, Tom interrupted. Weaponization, dominance, control, these are the patterns that led to our own near extinction. One of Reeves's men shifted nervously. Sir, we should secure the artifact and call for extraction. The dodecahedron pulsed once, and suddenly the amber glow left Tom's eyes. He stumbled, Rick catching him before he fell. What happened? Tom asked, his normal voice restored. Before anyone could answer, the floor beneath them shifted. The single-piece material flowed like liquid, forming a new structure at the center of the room, a waist-high pedestal with 12 small depressions arranged in a circle. From the ceiling, a concentrated beam of light illuminated a section of wall that began to transform, revealing a recessed alcove. Within it rested an object that drew everyone's attention. It resembled a crown or circlet, size for a human head, crafted from the same liquid-like metal as the dodecahedron. 12 slender crystal rods extended upward from its circumference, each tipped with a small replica of the dodecahedron. The interface, Tom whispered, knowledge somehow remaining despite the entity's departure from his consciousness. It allows direct neural connection to the codex, a neural interface. Samuel approached the alcove cautiously. Technology that interfaces directly with the human brain. That's centuries beyond our current capabilities. Marcus studied the symbols that had appeared around the alcove. The inscription warns of transformation. Whoever uses it will be changed. Changed how? Rick demanded. Neurologically restructured to process the information, Samuel theorized. Our brains aren't evolved to handle the volume or complexity of their knowledge. Reeves motioned to his men. Secure the artifact. Wait! James moved between Reeves's men and the interface. You don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't technology you can simply take and reverse engineer. It's integrated with biology, consciousness itself. Step aside, Dr. Harlow, Reeves said coldly. My orders are clear. The sequence isn't complete, Tom interjected, still disoriented but lucid. The Codex released me because it's preparing for the next phase. The interface requires preparation. As if responding to his words, the 12 depressions in the central pedestal began to glow. From each, a small crystalline key emerged, each unique in configuration, but clearly designed to fit the interface's structure. The keys of ascension, Tom continued, knowledge flowing through him in fragmented bursts. Without all 12, the interface remains dormant. A safeguard. Where are the other keys? Reeves demanded. Hidden throughout the city, Tom replied. The builders created a test. Only by solving the city's puzzles can all keys be gathered. One of Reeves's men approached the pedestal, reaching for the nearest key. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, energy surged through his body. He collapsed, unconscious but alive. Another safeguard, James observed. They can't be taken by force or without proper understanding. The dodecahedron pulsed rhythmically now, its symbols rearranging into what appeared to be a map of the city. 12 locations glowed on the projection, one of them pulsing brighter, their current position. It's showing us where to find the keys, Marcus realized. Reeves studied the projection, his tactical mind already formulating a plan. We'll split into teams. Recover all keys and return here. That's not how this works, James countered. The builders created tests, not a scavenger hunt. Each key requires solving a specific challenge, tests of ethics, intelligence, cooperation. How could you possibly know that? Reeves asked suspiciously. James touched his temple. The sphere shared fragments of understanding, not complete knowledge, but enough to grasp their intentions. Samuel examined the interface more closely without touching it. This could be the most significant discovery in human history, direct access to the knowledge of an advanced civilization. Or the most dangerous, Rick added grimly. There's a reason they didn't just hand it over. We proceed carefully, James decided, looking at his team. We solve the puzzles as they were meant to be solved. This isn't about who gets the technology, it's about proving we deserve it. And if we don't deserve it, Marcus asked quietly. The chamber rumbled slightly, as if the city itself was responding to the question. On the dodecahedron's projection, several areas of the city began pulsing red. I think we're about to find out what happens if we fail their test, James said. An uneasy alliance formed as they ascended from the underground chamber. Despite Reeves's initial resistance, the demonstration of the key's protective measures convinced him that cooperation was necessary, at least temporarily. We'll divide into 3 teams, James proposed as they gathered in the central plaza. That way, we can cover more ground while maintaining sufficient numbers for safety. The holographic map from the Codex had imprinted itself in their memories, 12 locations pulsing across the ancient city. Some were in structures they'd already identified. Others lay in areas they hadn't yet explored. My men maintain operational control, Reeves insisted. Each team will include at least 2 of my personnel. Fine, James conceded, but our experts lead the intellectual approach. Your men provide security, nothing more. They divided quickly, James with Tom, and 2 of Reeves' men would investigate the eastern quadrant. Marcus with Samuel and 2 more soldiers would take the western structures. Rick would reluctantly accompany Reeves himself to the northern section. Maintain radio contact, Reeves ordered, distributing communication devices. Report any findings immediately. The city's energy field may interfere with electronics, Samuel warned. These are quantum-encrypted military prototypes, Reeves replied. They should function regardless. James led his team toward a structure they hadn't yet explored, a low, octagonal building near the edge of the city. According to the map, it contained 1 of the 12 keys. The builders created these challenges for beings with human-like intelligence, James theorized as they approached. They wanted us to solve them, eventually. When we were ready, Tom added, still processing. Fragments of knowledge left from his connection to the Codex. But there's a time limit now that the city is active. The octagonal building had a single entrance, an archway inscribed with symbols that glowed with internal light. Unlike the other structures, this one was remarkably well preserved, as if time had barely touched it. Inside, they found a circular room with a shallow pool of what appeared to be mercury at its center. The liquid metal formed a perfect reflective surface, completely still despite the slight breeze flowing through the open doorway. Unusual, Tom said, kneeling beside the pool but careful not to touch it. Mercury shouldn't maintain surface tension like this. One of Reeves's men approached, scanner in hand. Not registering as mercury or any known element. No radiation, no toxic emissions. The walls of the chamber were covered in concentric rings of symbols, all focused on the central pool. As they watched, the liquid metal began to move of its own accord, rising at the center to form a perfect sphere approximately 1 foot in diameter. It's responding to our presence, James observed. The sphere hovered above the now empty depression, rotating slowly. Its surface shifted and flowed, forming and reforming into different geometric shapes before returning to a sphere. It's demonstrating its properties, Tom suggested. Showing us what it can do, James studied the symbols on the wall. Marcus would be better at this, but I think these are instructions. The sphere suddenly projected a beam of light toward the wall, illuminating specific symbols in sequence. The light then swept across the room, stopping on Tom. It's chosen you again, James said. Tom swallowed nervously. What am I supposed to do? The sphere morphed again, this time forming a replica of a human hand, palm up, fingers slightly cupped. I think it wants you to place something in it, James suggested. We don't have anything to give it. Tom replied. One of Reeves's men stepped forward, reaching into his pocket. Try this. He produced a small metal object, a bullet. Tom took it hesitantly. Why would it want this? The symbols, James said, studying the wall more carefully. I think this is a test of transformation, of taking something destructive and repurposing it. Tom approached the liquid metal hand and carefully placed the bullet in its palm. The hand closed around it, the sphere reabsorbing the shaped extension. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the sphere began to pulse with internal light. It vibrated, humming at a frequency they could feel in their bones. When it stabilized again, it reopened the hand-like extension. Where the bullet had been now rested a tiny sculpture. The metal completely reformed into a perfect miniature of a DNA double helix. "Transformation complete," James breathed. It demonstrated its ability to reshape matter at the molecular level. "Incredible technology," one of Reeves's men murmured. "The military applications alone. That's exactly the kind of thinking that would fail these tests," Tom interrupted. "This isn't a weapon. It's a tool for creation, for healing." The liquid metal sculpture rose from the hand, floating toward Tom. As he cautiously accepted it, the sculpture morphed again, revealing a crystalline structure at its core, one of the keys they sought. "We passed the first test," James said, "understanding the difference between destruction and creation." Tom's radio crackled to life. Marcus's voice came through, distorted but audible. "James, we've found something in the western compound, some kind of biological laboratory. And there's something alive in here." Reeves cut in on the shared frequency. "Succeeds, Ticito didu. Do not engage. Wait for backup." But Samuel's voice interrupted, panic evident. "It's already active. Some kind of containment system just opened. There's—" The transmission cut off abruptly. James looked at Tom, the newly acquired key glinting in his palm. "We need to move. Now!" James and Tom raced across the central plaza, the two soldiers struggling to keep pace. The western compound, a cluster of interconnected structures that resembled laboratories, loomed ahead, its entrance pulsing with the same blue energy that now permeated the entire city. "Marcus." "Samuel," James called into his radio. "Report status." "Only static," answered. "Those buildings appeared to be designed for biological research," Tom said as they ran. "Based on what I glimpsed from the Codex's knowledge." They reached the compound entrance, where Rick was already waiting, his expression grim. "Reeves went in ahead with one man, ordered me to secure the perimeter." "What did Marcus discover?" James demanded. "Some kind of stasis chambers," Rick replied. "Dozens of them, most empty, but one was active." They entered cautiously. The interior was unlike anything they'd seen in the city so far, more technological than architectural. Transparent tubes ran along walls and ceilings, carrying luminescent fluids in various colors. Workstations with unrecognizable equipment lined the main chamber. This way, Rick led them through a doorway into a larger space. The sight froze them in their tracks. Marcus and Samuel stood completely motionless, as if trapped in amber. A field of golden energy surrounded them, suspending them in time. Beyond them, Reeves and his man were similarly immobilized, but what held their attention was the figure moving between the frozen men. It wasn't human, though it walked upright, taller and more slender than a person, with the six-fingered hands and elongated skull they'd seen in the holographic records. Its skin was a pale blue-gray, eyes large and entirely black. It wore no clothing, but its body seemed covered in a shimmering film that rippled with each movement. "One of the builders," James whispered. "Still alive after 4,000 years." The being turned toward them, revealing what it held, a transparent cube containing what appeared to be a living tissue sample. The cube pulsed with its own internal rhythm, synchronized with the city's energy field. "Do not interfere," the being spoke. Its voice melodic and layered like Tom's had been when connected to the Codex. "The evaluation continues." "What are you doing to our friends?" James asked, stepping forward slowly. "Time suspension, temporary." The being studied them with those depthless black eyes. "They attempted to access knowledge without completing proper sequence." Tom moved to James's side. "We're trying to complete the sequence. We're gathering the keys." The being tilted its head, a gesture eerily similar to human curiosity. "Yes, first key acquired. Transformation understanding demonstrated." It gestured to the cube in its hands. Second test involves comprehension of life manipulation. You're one of the builders, James said. We thought you left Earth thousands of years ago. Most departed. Some remained in stasis. Guardians of the repositories, the being approached, movements fluid and precise. I'm keeper of sequences, final arbiter of readiness. The cube in the keeper's hands pulsed brighter. Inside, the tissue sample was growing, cells dividing and organizing at an accelerated rate. Your species stands at crossroads, the keeper continued. Genetic manipulation capabilities emerging. This test evaluates ethical understanding of such power. The cube expanded, the sample within now visibly forming into a complex organism, something resembling both plant and animal. With neural structures and photosynthetic surfaces, creation without comprehension leads to devastation, the keeper said. As it did for us. Your people created something you couldn't control. Tom asked. We created perfection, the keeper replied, then feared it would replace us. Conflict followed. It extended the cube toward them. Now you must demonstrate understanding. The organism inside had fully formed, a hybrid creature about the size of a human hand, pulsing with its own life energy. What do you want us to do? James asked. Choose its fate, the keeper answered simply. Terminate as potential threat. Preserve as new species. Your decision reveals your readiness. The two soldiers raised their weapons instinctively, but James held up his hand. Wait, this is a test of ethics, not security. He studied the organism carefully. It had developed rudimentary sensory organs, was clearly alive and responsive to its environment. We can't just destroy a living thing because we fear what it might become, James said finally. But we also can't release it without understanding its impact on existing ecosystems. Tom stepped forward. We choose contained preservation, study and understanding before any decision about integration or termination. The keeper's expression remained unreadable, but the cube in its hands shifted, a section of its structure reconfiguring, to reveal a second crystalline key embedded within the living tissue. Wisdom demonstrated, the keeper acknowledged. Balance between caution and respect for life. Second key granted. The cube separated, the organism remaining suspended in one half while the key floated free. Tom accepted it reverently. Release our friends, James requested. When third key is acquired, the keeper responded, turning away. Proceed to Northern Temple. Time grows short. Short for what? Rick demanded from the doorway, weapons still ready. The keeper paused, looking back with those endless black eyes. The signal was sent. Others are responding. They come to witness your trial. Others? James asked. More of your kind. Yes, the keeper replied. The architects return. The final judgment approaches. The architects are returning, Tom repeated, as they hurried toward the Northern Temple. The builders are coming back to Earth. The implications hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just about ancient technology or rewriting history books anymore. It was about an imminent encounter with non-human intelligence. How much time do we have? Rick asked. The keeper didn't specify, James replied. But given their level of technology, it could be hours rather than days. The Northern Temple was the largest structure they hadn't yet explored, a stepped pyramid similar to the central one, but with subtle differences in its architecture. Its entrance was sealed by what appeared to be a solid stone door with no visible mechanism. No obvious way in, Rick observed. Running his hands along the seamless surface, Tom removed the two keys they'd acquired, studying them thoughtfully. These aren't just tokens of completion. I think they're actual keys. He approached the door, noticing two small indentations that matched the crystalline structures. When he placed them in position, they locked into place with an audible click. The door remained sealed, however. 10 more to go, James said grimly. And our friends remain suspended until we get the third. A low humming drew their attention upward. A drone, clearly modern human technology, hovered above the plaza, observing them. Reeves has backup, Rick warned. Probably monitoring the situation from outside the city perimeter. We don't have time for human politics, Tom said with uncharacteristic firmness. We need to solve this puzzle regardless of who's watching. James examined the door more carefully, noticing a subtle depression in its center. There's something here. A panel or the stone surface beneath his fingers suddenly liquefied, forming a small window-like opening. Beyond it lay darkness, but as they watched, a soft light began to glow from within. Something was approaching the opening from the other side. What emerged was unlike anything they'd seen yet. A crystalline structure resembling a human brain, but with impossible complexity. It hovered at the opening, pulsing with internal light that shifted through colors they could barely comprehend. A quantum crystal matrix, Tom breathed. Knowledge from his brief connection to the codex surfacing again. It's a computational device of some kind. The crystalline brain projected a beam of light that swept over the three men. When it reached James, it paused, then expanded to envelop him in a cocoon of gentle luminescence. James. Rick moved forward, but Tom held him back. Wait, I don't think it's harming him. Inside the light cocoon, James stood motionless, his eyes wide but unfocused. His lips moved as if speaking, though no sound emerged. It's communicating with him, Tom said. A direct neural interface. Minutes passed, with James locked in silent communion with the crystal brain. Finally the light receded, and he stumbled backward, catching himself against Rick's steadying hand. What happened? Rick demanded. What did it show you? James looked shaken, his face pale. Everything. Their journey to Earth. The genetic modifications they made to early hominids. The schism in their ranks over how much to interfere with our development. What else? Tom pressed. They're not just coming back to judge us, James said gravely. They're returning because they need us. Their species is dying. Genetic degradation from too much manipulation of their own genome. They need genetic diversity that only humans can provide. They want to use us as breeding stock. Rick's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. It's more complicated than that, James explained. They need our genetic resilience, yes, but they're offering an exchange, their knowledge for our biological vitality. A symbiotic relationship rather than exploitation. The crystal brain pulsed again, projecting a holographic image, a star map similar to what they'd seen before, but now with a trajectory clearly marked. A vessel of some kind moving toward Earth. They'll be here within 12 hours, James interpreted. The advanced ship, carrying their geneticists and diplomats. And if we refuse this exchange? Rick asked. The crystal brain shifted, its projection changing to show scenes of technological marvels. Clean energy, disease eradication, faster than light travel, then abruptly switched to images of conflict and destruction. I think that's clear enough, Tom said quietly. Cooperation or confrontation? It's not threatening us, James clarified. It's showing possible outcomes. They believe their knowledge could elevate humanity beyond our current challenges. But they acknowledge it could also lead to our destruction if misused or rejected out of fear. The crystal brain retreated slightly, then extended a tendril of its structure. The end solidified, forming the third key. They're giving us a choice, James said, accepting the key. Complete the trials, access the codex, understand who they are and what they offer before they arrive. Make an informed decision rather than reacting from ignorance. The door began to reshape itself, forming an opening large enough to enter. The third test wasn't a test at all, Tom realized. It was disclosure, honesty about their intentions. And now we have a deadline, Rick added grimly. 12 hours to get the remaining keys, access the codex, and decide the future of human-alien relations. James stared at the key in his hand, its crystalline structure catching the light. We need to free the others. We'll need everyone's expertise for what comes next. With 3 keys secured, they returned to the biological laboratory. The scene remained unchanged. Marcus, Samuel, Reeves, and his soldier frozen in the temporal stasis field, the keeper nowhere to be seen. How do we release them? Rick asked. Tom approached the stasis field cautiously, the 3 keys glowing faintly in his hand. As he neared, they began to resonate, vibrating in harmony with the field itself. Acting on intuition, he presented them to the golden energy barrier. The field pulsed once, then dissipated. The four men collapsed forward, catching themselves as awareness returned. What happened? Samuel gasped, disoriented. You've been in temporal suspension, James explained quickly. We've acquired 3 keys, and we have less than 12 hours before the builders arrive. Marcus steadied himself against a workbench. Builders? Arriving? A lot has happened, Tom said, helping the linguist to his feet. We'll explain while we move. We need to find the remaining keys. Reeves, recovering more quickly than the others, fixed James with a hard stare. You made contact with one of them. An actual alien being. The keeper of sequences, James confirmed, and we've learned their true purpose in returning to Earth. They quickly brought the others up to speed as they exited the laboratory. The holographic map from the codex remained imprinted in their memories, guiding them toward the next location, a small structure near the city's southern edge. This changes everything, Marcus said, processing the implications. Proof of ancient alien intervention in human evolution. It rewrites not just history, but our understanding of what it means to be human. The philosophical debate can wait, Rick said pragmatically. Right now we have 9 more keys to find before their ship arrives. My orders were clear, Reeves said, his voice low. Secure any advanced technology for strategic advantage. Your orders are obsolete, James countered. We're not dealing with ruins anymore. We're preparing for first contact, or rather renewed contact. They reached the southern structure, a small, dome-shaped building with no visible entrance. Unlike the grand temples, this appeared more utilitarian in design. How do we get in? Samuel wondered, circling the seamless structure. Tom approached, the 3 keys still in his possession. As he neared the dome, a section of the wall simply vanished, providing access to the interior. Inside was a single chamber, empty except for a pedestal at its center. Upon the pedestal rested what appeared to be a metallic mask, shaped to fit a human face, but with no eye or mouth openings. Another test? Rick asked warily. Marcus examined the inscriptions covering the walls. These symbols reference truth and deception repeatedly. I believe this is a test of honesty. James approached the mask carefully. It appears designed to be worn by a human, Samuel noted, not by the builders themselves. They created these tests specifically for us. I don't like this, Rick warned. We have no idea what it might do. James reached for the mask. We don't have time for caution. Every minute brings their ship closer. Before anyone could object further, he lifted the mask and placed it against his face. Immediately it adhered to his skin, spreading to cover his entire head in a seamless metallic shell. James. Tom moved forward, but stopped as the mask began to glow. James stood rigid, his covered face reflecting the light from above. Then his voice emerged, but strangely mechanical, as if filtered through the mask itself. Neural interface active, accessing surface thoughts and core beliefs. It's reading his mind, Samuel whispered. Evaluating ethical framework and intentional deception, the masked James continued. His voice devoid of emotion. The walls of the chamber illuminated, projecting images from James's memories, his first archaeological dig, his theories about ancient civilizations, his private doubts about human readiness for advanced technology. It's extracting his deepest beliefs about the discovery. Marcus realized. More personal memories surfaced, James arguing with university officials, defending his theories despite ridicule. His unwavering commitment to truth, regardless of professional consequence. Then came the evaluation of his current intentions regarding the builder's technology. His genuine belief that knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. His concern about military applications. His hope that the builder's return could elevate humanity rather than subjugate it. Finally, the mask displayed his greatest fear, that humans would react with violence and fear, rejecting an opportunity for advancement. Truth assessment complete, the mechanical voice announced. Core motivations evaluated as knowledge preservation, species advancement, ethical distribution of technology. The mask detached itself from James's face, reforming into its original shape on his palms. Within its structure, a fourth key materialized. James gasped, sweat beading on his forehead. It saw everything. Every thought, every memory, every intention, and judged them acceptable, Tom said. The test of truth. It didn't just evaluate James, Marcus noted, studying the wall inscriptions that continued to glow. It recorded his consciousness, a complete neural map. Why would it do that? Samuel wondered. Insurance, Reeves said unexpectedly. They're evaluating which humans to trust if negotiations fail. The mask levitated from James's hands, hovering before each of them in turn. Its message was clear. Each would need to undergo the same evaluation. We don't have time for this, Rick protested. We don't have a choice, James replied. The keys won't be granted without passing the tests. And this one requires complete honesty about our intentions. Reeves stared at the floating mask, his expression unreadable. And if our intentions don't align with their expectations? The mask pulsed once, its surface briefly displaying an image of destruction. I think, James said quietly, we're about to find out exactly what each of us truly wants from this encounter. The mask had evaluated them all, one by one. Tom, Marcus, and Samuel passed readily, their scientific curiosity and ethical frameworks deemed compatible with the builder's expectations. Rick's military background initially raised concerns, but his core loyalty to the team and genuine desire to protect rather than control ultimately satisfied the test. Reeves was the last to don the mask. What it revealed remained private. The wall projections had mysteriously ceased after James's evaluation, but when the colonel emerged from the process, his demeanor had changed. A newfound gravity weighed on his features, and he'd been uncharacteristically silent since. 4 keys secured, 8 to go. And the clock was ticking. Their next destination was a structure unlike the others, partially submerged in what appeared to be an artificial lake at the city's center. The water was perfectly clear, yet seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence. The builders had advanced hydroengineering, Samuel observed, as they approached the lake's edge. This water hasn't stagnated in 4,000 years. The entire system must still be operational, Tom added. Filtration, circulation, possibly even molecular restructuring to prevent biological contamination. The structure rising from the center of the lake resembled a lotus flower. Its petals formed from the same seamless material as the other buildings, but with a more organic aesthetic. No obvious path led to it. Do we swim? Rick asked pragmatically, as if in response the lake's surface began to ripple. The water directly before them separated, forming a pathway of dry land leading to the central structure. The water stood like walls on either side, defying natural physics. Molecular cohesion control. Samuel breathed in amazement. They can manipulate the fundamental forces binding matter. They proceeded cautiously along the revealed pathway. The water walls hummed with potential energy, microscopic luminescent particles dancing within. The lotus structure opened as they approached, petals unfurling to reveal an entrance. Inside, they found a circular chamber with a central pool, much smaller than the lake outside. This water glowed with intense blue-white light. Floating above the pool was an object that immediately captured their attention, a perfect sphere of what appeared to be pure energy, contained within an intricate framework of interlocking geometric shapes. The framework rotated slowly around the energy core, adjusting its configuration in subtle, hypnotic patterns. It's beautiful, Marcus whispered. It's a power source, Samuel corrected, his scientific mind cutting through the aesthetic appreciation. Some form of controlled plasma, or perhaps something beyond our current understanding of physics. As they watched, the framework reconfigured itself, opening a section to reveal the energy core directly. A tendril of blue-white light extended toward them, stopping a few feet away. It hovered there, seemingly waiting. Another test, James surmised. But what's it asking of us? Tom studied the inscriptions circling the pool. These reference unity, confluence, and harmonization. I think it wants us to Join with it somehow. Join with pure energy? Rick scoffed. That would kill a human instantly. Not necessarily, Samuel countered. If it can manipulate molecular structures with this level of precision, it could interface with our bioelectrical systems without harm. Marcus had been unusually quiet, staring intently at the energy tendril. It's not asking all of us, he said finally. It's asking one of us. How can you tell? James asked. The patterns, Marcus replied, pointing to the shifting framework. They match brainwave patterns. Alpha, beta, theta, delta, it's cycling through them, looking for resonance. As if confirming his analysis, the tendril moved directly toward Marcus. He instinctively stepped back. It's chosen you, Tom said. Just like the Codex chose me earlier. Marcus swallowed hard. And what happens if I connect with it? Unknown, Samuel admitted. But given the pattern established by previous tests, it likely grants access to knowledge in exchange for understanding your consciousness. The risk is significant, James acknowledged. But we're running out of time. Marcus stared at the waiting tendril of energy. If it helps us prepare for their arrival, he stepped forward resolutely. Marcus. Wait, Rick began, but the linguist had already extended his hand. The moment contact was made, the energy flowed up Marcus's arm, enveloping him in a cocoon of blue-white light. His body lifted slightly off the ground, suspended in the glow. Within the energy field, Marcus's expression shifted rapidly. Wonder, shock, fear, and finally deep concentration. His lips moved as if speaking, though no sound emerged. His neural patterns are being directly accessed, Samuel theorized, monitoring with a handheld device. It's like a computer downloading and uploading simultaneously. After several tense minutes, the energy field gently lowered Marcus back to the floor and receded. The framework around the core reconfigured once more, revealing a fifth key embedded within its structure. Marcus stood unsteadily, his eyes wide. Their language, he gasped. I understand it completely now. The structure, the mathematics behind it, the conceptual framework, it's all in my mind. You can translate everything? James asked urgently. Yes, Marcus nodded. But that's not all. I know their history now, the full truth of their involvement with humanity, and I know exactly what they're coming back for. You said it was genetic diversity, Tom reminded him. That's only part of it, Marcus replied, his voice shaking slightly. The rest is far more complex and potentially far more dangerous. The fifth key floated toward him, and he accepted it with a trembling hand. The lotus structure around them began to close, urging them to exit. What did you learn? James pressed as they hurried back along the water pathway. Marcus glanced at the darkening sky above. They're not just coming to save themselves, he said gravely. They're coming to save us from something else. Something that followed them to Earth the first time, and is following them again. What do you mean, something else? James demanded, as they hurried toward their next location. What's following them? Marcus struggled to articulate concepts newly implanted in his mind. They call them the Void Harbingers. They're not exactly a species, more like a phenomenon with consciousness. They consume worlds, not physically, but by corrupting the fundamental information structure of reality. That doesn't make any sense, Rick said flatly. It does if you understand their conception of the universe, Marcus explained. The builders, they call themselves the Anurai, believe reality is fundamentally informational. Matter, energy, even consciousness are expressions of underlying code. The Harbingers corrupt this code. Like a virus, Samuel suggested. Close enough, Marcus nodded. The Anurai fled their home system when it was infected. Some came here, seeding genetic modifications that would eventually allow humans to help them fight the Harbingers if they ever followed. They had reached their next destination, a tall, spire-like structure that pulsed with rhythmic light patterns. The door opened automatically as they approached. This new context changes our approach, James said as they entered. We're not just preparing for diplomatic contact. We may be preparing for some kind of defense. Inside, they found a chamber dominated by what appeared to be a pool of completely black liquid. The substance was so dark, it seemed to absorb the light around it. Yet its surface reflected their images with perfect clarity. Some form of programmable matter, Samuel theorized. Approaching cautiously, floating above the black pool, was a device unlike any they'd seen before. It resembled a delicate metallic flower with numerous thin petals that continuously unfolded and refolded in complex patterns. At its center glowed a small but intense point of light. A quantum resonator, Marcus said, knowledge flowing from his enhanced understanding. It creates patterns in reality that can block the Harbinger's corruption. How does it work? Samuel asked. Before Marcus could answer, the device activated. The light at its center intensified, and the metal petals began moving more rapidly. The black pool below rippled in response, and from its depths rose a series of shapes, perfect geometric forms, that hovered in the air before them. "It's showing us something," Tom observed. The shapes rearranged themselves, forming a model of their solar system. Then from beyond the orbit of Pluto, a distortion appeared, a warping of the very fabric of the model itself. It spread inward, consuming planets as it advanced. "The Harbingers," Marcus whispered. "This is a simulation of what happens if they reach Earth." The model reset, but this time a network of points appeared around Earth, identical to the pattern of cities they now knew existed across the globe. Each point pulsed with light, creating a protective field that halted the advancing distortion. "The cities are defensive positions," James realized. "The repositories aren't just knowledge vaults. They're components of a planetary defense system." The flower-like device rotated, its petals reconfiguring to display a new pattern. The black pool responded by forming a three-dimensional map of the city they currently occupied. 12 points of light appeared, corresponding to the locations of the keys they sought. "The system requires all 12 keys to activate," Samuel deduced. "That's why the tests are so rigorous. The builders needed to ensure only those with proper understanding and intention could access the defense network." The device suddenly projected a beam of light directly at Reeves. The colonel stiffened as the beam enveloped him, his expression changing from surprise to something deeper, a profound realization. "Colonel?" Rick moved toward him, concerned. When the light receded, Reeves's demeanor had transformed completely. The military hardness was gone, replaced by a clarity of purpose that seemed to radiate from him. "I understand now," he said, his voice steady. "My orders, my mission, they were based on ignorance. This isn't about military advantage or strategic positioning. It's about survival." The flower device's petals opened fully, revealing a 6th key at its center. "It showed you something," James said. "Something specific to you," Reeves nodded. "The consequences of treating this as a weapon rather than a shield. My superior's plans would have activated the system incorrectly, creating a beacon that would draw the Harbingers directly to Earth." He reached for the key, which floated willingly into his palm. 6 down, 6 to go, Tom counted. "And how much time remains?" Samuel checked his watch. "Less than 7 hours until their estimated arrival." "The next key location is in the western quadrant," Marcus said, his enhanced knowledge providing guidance. "But there's something else we need to know." He turned to face them all, his expression grave. "The defense system won't activate unless a human consciousness interfaces directly with them. Codex, a complete neural integration, irreversible and potentially fatal. Someone has to sacrifice themselves," Rick asked incredulously. "One consciousness must join with the system to coordinate the defense," Marcus confirmed. "The Anurai designed it this way intentionally. They believed only a voluntary sacrifice would prove humanity worthy of salvation." James stared at the 6th key now gleaming in Reeves's hand. "Then we'd better keep moving. We still need to decide who that person will be and whether humanity should accept the builders' help at all." The western quadrant contained a cluster of smaller structures that resembled residential buildings. Unlike the grand temples and specialized facilities they'd explored, these were more intimate in scale, living spaces for the builders who once inhabited the city. The Anuri lived here for generations, Marcus explained, as they navigated the narrow passages between buildings. Not just as visitors or researchers, but as a community. They integrated with early human populations, sharing knowledge gradually, until the schism, James added. Yes, some believed humans were developing too slowly and needed more direct intervention. Others insisted on non-interference, allowing natural evolution. The conflict eventually forced them to leave Earth altogether. They approached a building slightly larger than the others, its entrance marked with symbols that Marcus now recognized as indicating a communal gathering place. This was their equivalent of a town hall or forum, he translated, where collective decisions were made. The interior opened into a circular chamber with tiered seating surrounding a central platform. Upon the platform rested what appeared to be a table or altar, though its surface was obscured by a shimmering field of energy. Another test, Rick asked warily. Not exactly, Marcus replied, studying the symbols etched into the platform's base. This is more of a demonstration. As they approached, the energy field dissipated, revealing what lay beneath, a crystalline structure shaped like a human brain, but with significant modifications. Additional lobes and neural pathways were visible, structures that no human brain possessed. It's a model of neural enhancement, Samuel realized, examining it closely without touching. Showing potential modifications to human brain structure. The next evolutionary leap they had planned for us, Marcus confirmed. Before the schism halted their program, the crystalline brain began to pulse with inner light, projections emanating from its surface. Images of human history appeared around them, not the past, but potential futures. Multiple timelines branching from decision points, some leading to advanced utopian societies, others to extinction. They were simulating our possible development paths, James said in awe, trying to determine the optimal intervention strategy. One timeline glowed more brightly than the others, a path showing humans developing advanced technology harmoniously, expanding to the stars without the warfare and environmental destruction that plagued other scenarios. This was their hope for us, Marcus said softly. What they believed we could become with their guidance. The projection shifted abruptly, showing a darker outcome, the arrival of the harbingers, the corruption of reality itself spreading across Earth, humans helpless against a threat they couldn't comprehend. And this is what they feared, James added. The crystalline brain pulsed again, and from its center rose a small object, a neural implant designed to fit at the base of a human skull. It hovered above the brain model, rotating slowly. The seventh key, Tom identified it. More than that, Marcus replied. It's an actual enhancement device, designed to activate dormant neural pathways the Anuri encoded in human DNA millennia ago. Reeves studied the implant with newfound understanding. It would give a human the capacity to interface with their technology without dying in the process. Exactly, Marcus nodded. The sacrifice might not be necessary if the right person used this, but it would permanently alter them, no longer fully human, not quite Anuri. Something in between, the implications hung heavily in the air. The key to saving humanity might require one of them to become something beyond human. Who would it even work on? Rick asked practically. Not everyone, Marcus admitted. The genetic markers are rare. The Anuri were selective in their modifications, concerned about potential misuse. Samuel had been analyzing the crystalline brain structure. It's sending out some kind of scanning field. I think it's checking our genetic compatibility. The neural implant moved suddenly, floating directly toward James. It hovered before him, waiting. It's chosen you, Tom said quietly. James stared at the implant, the weight of decision evident in his expression. What would it do to me exactly? Enhanced neural processing, access to the Anuri knowledge base, the ability to perceive reality as information patterns, Marcus listed. But your consciousness would be fundamentally altered. Your perception of existence would never be the same. Would I still be me, James asked. Your core identity would remain, Marcus assured him. But expanded, connected to something larger. Reeves stepped forward unexpectedly. There's another consideration. My superiors know about this expedition. If they learn of this technology, they'll stop at nothing to acquire it, with or without your cooperation. How would they even know? Rick challenged. Reeves gestured upward, where the drone they'd spotted earlier still hovered, just visible through an opening in the ceiling. They're watching, waiting, and they're not the only interested parties. The clock is ticking on multiple fronts, Samuel observed grimly. The Anurai ship approaches. The harbingers may follow, and now human forces might intervene before we complete the activation. James reached for the implant decisively. We need to keep moving. 5 more keys to go. As his fingers closed around it, the implant liquefied, flowing over his hand and wrist like quicksilver before solidifying into a bracelet of intricate design. The 7th key had transformed, ready for use but not yet activated, leaving the final choice for later. Let's go, James said, the weight of potential transformation visible in his eyes. We still need to decide humanity's response to what's coming. The sky above the ancient city had changed. What began as scattered stars now displayed unusual patterns, lights moving in formation, atmospheric disturbances that defied normal weather. The Anurai ship was approaching, its presence already affecting Earth's environment. 5 hours remaining, Samuel announced grimly as they hurried toward their next location. The neural implant-turned bracelet pulsed occasionally on James's wrist, as if alive and aware. He could feel it scanning him, analyzing his genetic structure, preparing for potential integration. Their next destination was a spherical structure set apart from the others, connected to the main complex by a single narrow bridge. As they crossed, the material beneath their feet became transparent, revealing a vast mechanism extending deep below the city, gears, conduits, and energy pathways on an enormous scale. The city's engine, Marcus explained, his enhanced knowledge providing context. The entire complex is a machine designed to reshape reality at the quantum level when fully activated. The spherical building had no obvious entrance until they reached it. Then a section of the wall simply ceased to exist, providing access to the interior. Inside was a chamber unlike any they'd encountered. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in what appeared to be liquid metal, constantly flowing in complex patterns. At the center floated a device that defied conventional description, a cluster of crystalline shards suspended in perfect formation, rotating around a central void where something seemed to both exist and not exist simultaneously. A quantum uncertainty engine, Marcus identified it with wonder. It manipulates probabilities at the fundamental level. In English, Rick requested. It can alter what's possible and what isn't, Samuel translated, changing the rules of reality within its influence. The device pulsed as they approached, the void at its center expanding slightly. Within that impossible space, images formed. The same scene played out multiple times with subtle variations, probability branches splitting and recombining. It's showing us decision points, James realized, moments where choices alter future outcomes. The images settled on their current situation, their small group standing in this very room, but with dozens of variations. In some, they activated the city's defenses successfully. In others, they failed, with catastrophic consequences. In yet others, different members of the team made different choices about the neural implant, a test of understanding consequences, Tom suggested. Seeing beyond immediate outcomes to long-term impact, the quantum device expanded again, now showing a specific branch of probability, James accepting the neural transformation, activating the defense system, but at great personal cost. His consciousness fragmented, partly human, partly something else entirely. Is that what happens if I use the implant? James asked, disturbed by the image of his possible future self. One possibility, Marcus clarified. The most probable based on current conditions, but not the only outcome. The device shifted again, revealing another branch, someone else accepting the neural interface. The image was blurred, the identity unclear. Someone else could be compatible. Samuel asked. The genetic markers are rare but not unique to James, Marcus confirmed. Though compatibility doesn't guarantee successful integration. The quantum engine pulsed rhythmically now, its crystalline components realigning. From within the central void emerged what appeared to be a small glass orb containing swirling mist. The mist formed and reformed into countless tiny scenes, possibilities condensed into physical form. The eighth key, Reeves identified it, and a tool of decision, Marcus added. The probability lens allows its user to see the most likely outcome of any immediate choice. James reached for the orb carefully. As his fingers touched the glass, the mist inside reacted, forming a clear image. His team successfully gathering all 12 keys, but confronted by armed forces before they could complete the activation. We'll face opposition before we finish, he warned, sharing what he'd seen. Human opposition. My former team, Reeves confirmed grimly. If they've lost contact with me for too long, they have orders to secure the site by force. How much time do we have? Rick asked. James consulted the probability lens again. The mist swirled, then showed helicopters approaching. Less than 2 hours before they arrive. Against the 5 hours until the Anurai ship reaches Earth, Samuel calculated. We need to accelerate our efforts. The quantum engine pulsed once more before beginning to power down, its purpose fulfilled. The eighth key, the probability lens, remained active in James's hand, occasionally shifting to show different potential outcomes as circumstances changed. 4 more keys, Tom counted. 4 more tests, and decisions to make that will affect all of humanity, James added, studying the swirling possibilities in the orb. Whether to resist the Anurai or welcome them, whether to activate their defense system against the Harbingers, whether one of us should undergo permanent transformation. Marcus had been studying the flow patterns in the liquid metal walls. The next key location is changing, he announced suddenly. The city is reconfiguring itself, bringing the remaining keys closer together, responding to the time pressure, Samuel theorized. It's adapting to our needs, or setting a trap, Rick suggested darkly. Funneling us exactly where it wants us. James checked the probability lens once more. The mist formed an image of the central pyramid, where they'd found the gauntlet. The final 4 keys have been relocated to the central chamber. But something else is there now, waiting for us. The Keeper? Tom asked. No, James replied, watching the mist swirl ominously. Something new has entered the city. Something that doesn't want us to succeed. They approached the central pyramid with weapons ready, Reeves and Rick taking point while the scientists followed closely behind. The entire city had changed since they first entered the pyramid hours ago, energy coursing through every structure. Systems activating sequentially, the air itself charged with potential. The city's preparing for full activation, Samuel observed, monitoring readings on a cobbled-together device. Power levels increasing exponentially. James consulted the probability lens frequently as they advanced, tracking shifting possibilities. Whatever's waiting for us is still there, hostile, patient. At the pyramid's entrance, they paused. The narrow doorway now pulsed with erratic energy, the blue glow they'd seen throughout the city, intermittently flashing red. That's new, Tom noted uneasily. Marcus studied the energy pattern. It's corrupted somehow, not functioning according to original parameters. The Harbingers, Rick suggested. You said they corrupt information patterns. No, Marcus shook his head. This is different. Less alien, more human, Reeves finished grimly. Someone's attempting to interface with the system without proper understanding. They entered cautiously. The interior chamber had transformed dramatically. The crystalline altar now expanded into a complex console that filled the center of the room. The ceiling had become transparent, revealing the turbulent sky above, where atmospheric anomalies intensified as the Anurai ship approached. And standing at the console, Hand pressed against a control surface was a man none of them recognized. "Dr. Harlow," the stranger acknowledged without turning. "I was wondering when you'd join us. Who are you?" James demanded. The man turned slowly. Middle-aged, unremarkable in appearance, except for his eyes, which glowed with the same red energy corrupting the doorway. "Dr. Alexander Weiss. I represent interests that have been monitoring builder sites for decades. We've waited patiently for someone like you to lead us here." Reeves raised his weapon. "You're working for Sentinel Group," Weiss smiled thinly. "As were you, Colonel, until your unfortunate change of heart. They're very disappointed in your lack of communication. How did you get here ahead of us?" Tom asked. "I've been here all along," Weiss replied. "Observing, waiting for you to solve the puzzles I couldn't. And now—" He gestured to the console before him, where 4 crystalline keys sat in a row. "The final keys waiting to be claimed. That's impossible," Samuel protested. "The keys require passing tests. Specific ethical and intellectual challenges." Weiss's smile widened. "Unless you find a way to bypass the system, which is precisely what this does." He held up his other hand, revealing a device attached to his palm, a metallic disc that pulsed with sickly red light, tendrils extending into his flesh like roots. The subverter, Marcus identified it with horror. A forbidden technology the dissenting Anurai faction created. It doesn't pass the tests, it corrupts them. "Precisely," Weiss nodded. "It convinces the system the tests have been passed, when in fact they've been circumvented. Ingenious, really. We recovered it from another site decades ago, but needed an active city to employ it fully." "You don't understand what you're interfacing with," James warned. "This city is part of a planetary defense system against a threat you can't comprehend." "Oh, we comprehend plenty," Weiss countered. "Enough to know this technology can reshape reality itself. Imagine the applications. Rewriting probability, altering fundamental forces, restructuring matter at will." He gestured to the 4 keys. "All we need is the complete set and a compatible human consciousness to activate it." "The subverter is corrupting the entire system," Marcus warned. "If you activate it in this state, you'll create a beacon that draws the harbingers directly to Earth." Weiss scoffed. "Alien bogeymen? A convenient myth, I'm sure. No, Dr. Harlow, what's coming is opportunity, and Sentinel Group will control it." James stepped forward cautiously. "The keys won't work for you. They're genetically keyed to those who pass the actual tests." "A minor inconvenience," Weiss replied. "The subverter is already rewriting those parameters. Soon they'll accept any human interface." He studied James intently. Though having a genuinely compatible subject would accelerate the process, Reeves moved to James's side. "We can't let him activate the system in this corrupted state." "Agreed," Rick added, weapon trained on Weiss. "Whatever it takes." James consulted the probability lens one final time. The mist inside swirled frantically before settling on an image. The subverter device separated from Weiss. "The corruption receding from the system. We need to remove that device from him," James whispered to the others. "The city's true defenses might activate against it if given the chance." Weiss's expression darkened. "Enough deliberation. I'm afraid I must insist on your cooperation, Dr. Harlow." He pressed something on the console, and the chamber's exit sealed shut, trapping them inside. "Sentinel teams are already securing the perimeter. There's nowhere to go." The pyramid trembled suddenly, energy surging through its structure. Above them, the sky darkened further as something massive began to take shape in the upper atmosphere. The Anurai vessel arriving ahead of schedule. "Time's up," Samuel whispered. "They're here." Weiss looked upward, momentarily distracted by the spectacle above. It was the opening they needed. "Now," James commanded. Rick and Reeves moved simultaneously, converging on Weiss from different angles. The corrupted scientist reacted with surprising speed, the subverter enhancing his reflexes. Energy discharged from the device, throwing Rick backward. But Reeves pressed forward, his military training evident in his precision. He grasped Weiss's wrist, forcing the subverter away from the console. The device pulsed angrily, tendrils digging deeper into Weiss's flesh as he struggled. "It's bonded to him," Reeves shouted. "I can't remove it." The console began to destabilize, energy patterns fluctuating wildly as the corruption spread. The 4 remaining keys started to sink into the crystalline surface, about to be lost. James made his decision. He activated the neural implant on his wrist.